You're most welcome to SkillBridge Institute. We are still on project management, and right now we are going to discuss about risk response planning and control. So that is what we're going to discuss in this particular lesson. The first thing that we need to understand is that what is risk response planning and control? That is the first critical question that we need to understand. So if we're talking of risk response planning, this is identifying the best approach to handle risk and assigning actions. So this is where you're trying to understand the best thing that you can do for you to handle a particular risk, or those actions which you can take for you to be able to handle the risk. Let's understand risk control. We need to understand that risk control ensures that the response strategy are implemented effectively and monitored. So on this one, the approach which you gave on response planning, on risk control, that particular response, you are now trying to ensure that it is implemented effectively and as well as it is monitored. So that is what you are doing on risk control. Let's talk about the main goal. So the main goal of risk response planning and control is to mitigate threats and to maximize opportunities to positively impact the project. So on this one, you're trying to reduce the threats. You're trying to make sure that the risk shouldn't threaten your project. So that is what you're simply trying to do on risk response planning and control. Let's talk about key steps in risk response planning. On that one, number one, we need to understand that we need to assess risk priorities. So on assessing risk priorities, we need to make sure that we focus on those risks which have got high likelihood of occurring and as well as they have got high impact. So those ones you should assess. So all the risks which you have on your list, so you should try to find out which particular risk has got a high likelihood of occurring, and once it has occurred, this one will have got a huge impact. So those ones we need to deal with. You need to deal them with agency. So you need to give quick response to those risks. Number two, you need to choose risk response strategy. So on choosing risk response strategy, you need to focus first on threats. So if there are threats, you need to try to avoid those particular threats. So you can avoid those particular threats by eliminating the risk. So for example, you are doing a project and somebody is supposed to be supplying you with some materials, but you find that there is a risk that the guy who is supplying you with those materials might run short of materials at a certain point. So what you can simply do is to say, we're going to switch the supplier. This one shouldn't supply us because he's running at a risk of not giving us the materials at a certain period of what? Of time. So that is what you do on that one. Another thing on threats, you need to mitigate the threat. So let's say there is a certain risk, a threat. You should try to make sure that that particular threat is what? Is mitigated. So on that one, you should try to reduce that impact. If there is a threat, so before I explain further, we need to understand that if we're talking of threats, these are things which are coming from outside of your project scope. They're externals. These are coming from the outside. So for example, there is another threat that can affect your project. What you can do is that Another thing that we can do is that you can transfer that risk to a third party. So, for example, you can say there is a possibility that this particular risk might occur on our project. But what we're going to do here is this one. We are going to make sure that we register ourselves with the insurance company so that if this particular risk can happen, we should be covered. Another one, it is accept. So on, you need to accept the threat. So on that one, you acknowledge risk and plan contingencies. So on that one, you try to acknowledge that risks can occur. And at the same time, you are trying now to plan for contingency. So you can have maybe money contingency or resource contingency. So if you run out of resources, you say, we are going to do this one because you already have got some additional resources which are acting as contingency. Let's talk about opportunity. So on opportunities, you need to, once you see that you have got opportunities on your project, you need to exploit that particular opportunity. So on that one, you should act on that particular opportunity. So you need to act to ensure that you grab that particular opportunity. So that is what you need to do. For example, you're doing business and you see that there is a certain opportunity that your product might go viral on the market. So what you can do to take that opportunity, you need to invest in marketing so that a lot of people are aware of your product. Another one, you need to enhance that opportunity. If you're having an opportunity, you should make sure that you enhance that particular opportunity. So you can enhance, that is, you are increasing the opportunity likelihood. So, for example, you are allocating a lot of resources, you are giving that particular thing a good budget so that by the end of the day, you should enhance the opportunity of you succeeding in that particular project. Okay, another thing is you can share the opportunity. So let's say you see that there is this particular opportunity on the market, but our resources are not enough. Then you are taking another company to say, my friend, let's come here, let's discuss about this thing. There is this an opportunity, let's share. And the benefits, by the end of the day, we are also going to share. Another thing is you need to accept the opportunity. So on that one, you should be ready to act if the opportunity rises. So you should just be ready that once an opportunity rises in our project, we are going to deal with it. Let's talk about develop action plans. So on developing action plans, you need to create a detailed plan for each response strategy. So you should create that detailed plan for each response strategy. Then from there, you should assign responsibilities to particular people. Then from there, you should set deadlines. From there, you should set the amount of resources that will be required. So you should have got an action plan, a risk action plan on how you are going to deal with that one. So you say, this particular risk, we are going to respond it in this particular way. And the deadline, the time will be this one. And the amount of resources that will be required are these ones. Or the amount of budget that is required is this one. Another thing is that you need to define triggers to activate specific response planning. To activate specific response plans. So you should make sure that there are some things which are triggering some responses to what? To come into effect. Let's talk about risk control. On risk control, we are going to talk much about monitoring and adjusting responses. That is what we are going to talk about. So on monitoring and adjusting responses, Number one, we need to understand. Number one, track risk indicators. So you should track risk indicators. So on this one, you need to use tools like risk registered to eliminate risk status. So on this one, you should have a register, you should have a copy, or you can use a computer. You list your risks. So those ones, they'll give you a track. So because you are able to monitor the risk status. So you'll be monitoring those risk status using something that you have what? Something that you have written. Number two, evaluate response effectiveness. So on this one, you need to revise the effective responses. So you need to revise those responses which you see that they are ineffective. So those ones, they should be removed. The ineffective ones, they should be removed. Another one, you need to update risk register. So on that one, you should be able to add new risk and remove those risks which are irrelevant. Because at first you can list a lot of risks, but you find that by the end of the day, some risk will happen, or some other risk will not happen, or you are going to find out that some risks are relevant, some other risks are irrelevant. So you should make sure that you understand that particular concept. Another one, you need to communicate with the stakeholders. So you need to make sure that you always keep the stakeholders informed about the risks, as well as the status at which that particular risk is at that particular moment, and even the changes. So whenever you have managed to deal with a certain particular risk, tell the stakeholders to say, we have managed to deal with this particular risk, or this particular risk, we are going to deal it with this particular way. Or tell them that we thought that this is a risk, but as we are here, we understand that this now is no longer a risk at all. So communicate that one to the stakeholders. Let's talk about tips for effective risk response planning and control. Number one, you need to be proactive. So on that one, you should address the risk even before they occur. So you should be able to foresee risk before they occur and be able to face them head on, be able to deal with them before even they escalate. Number two, you should allocate resource wisely. So on that one, make sure that you have got well-written budget as well as well-written schedules on how you are going to execute your project. From there, you should involve stakeholders. This one ensures that the risk responses meet stakeholders' expectation. So make sure that if we are talking of risk, for you to effectively respond and plan as well as control the risk, you should involve the stakeholders. From there, you should use tools and techniques. So on that one, you are trying to use those tracking tools. The tools like Microsoft Office, Microsoft Trello, and the like. So all those tools can be used for you to be able to manage the risk. So that is what you need to understand on that one. From there, you should stay flexible. On that one, you should be able to revise the plans as project condition changes. So you can plan today, but by the end of the day, whatever you're planning today might not be effective tomorrow, just based on the situation that will be there tomorrow. So be flexible if those changes will be needed. You're most welcome. Thank you for choosing SkillBridge Institute.